Testing.
It's fine. Check.
Dear observers, if I can have your attention, please. My name is Juan Pablo Celis Garcia, and as many of you know, I am the observer focal point on the INC Secretariat, and I wish you a warm welcome to our conversation with observers hosted by the Executive Director of the United Nations Environment Program, Ms. Inger Andersen, Ambassador Mesa Quadra, the Chair of the INC, and the Executive Secretary of the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee on Plastic Pollution, Ms. Jyoti Martha Philip. As you may know, we began this practice at the second session of the INC in Paris, as we felt this is an important occasion for you to provide your feedback and as observers on this process, and also to share your voice, any concerns that you may have, giving us an opportunity to address them directly. A QR system has been put in place for observers that may wish to intervene. The QR codes are located next to each microphone. This system will help us address you by name and organization. We have set an hour for this meeting, and I'm grateful to the Executive Director, to the Chair, and to the Executive Secretary for making themselves available. I will invite them to provide brief opening remarks, and then I will open the floor to you, the observers, for your comments and questions. And we will start with the Executive Director of UNEP, Ms. Anderson. You have the floor.
Thank you so much, Juan Pablo. It's a real pleasure always to be in your presence. And can I thank everybody who's present here and who are so engaged in this absolutely critical negotiations and this critical process. Your voice matters. Your voice needs to be heard. And so we count on you, as we count on all stakeholders, to be present and to engage. And I do want to thank you. Many of you have made a long trip to come here to Kenya. It might not have been easy financially and so on, and we are deeply appreciative of that commitment. Look, you've heard me speak before, and I speak quite clearly that from UNEP's point of view, this internationally legally binding instrument will be quite key and quite absolutely critical to ensure that policy coherence and to drive that ambition that we need to have. At the INC-3, you have before you, as everyone does, a zero draft of the text of that legally binding instrument. Of course, it's just the first iteration of what is yet to come. That's how negotiations work. But as the chair has put together this draft, I think he has really sought to put all of the issues that have been put on the table by member states and stakeholders in the comments, which are all available on the website, to ensure that this draft encompasses what the expectations are. Now, it's like a multiple choice, right? Which way do you go? And you will not be surprised that we from UNEP, I certainly hope that we will go high ambition, but it is the chair's job to make sure that he reflects the totality of what has been proposed, and that is what is before you. Now, in my view, it is absolutely critical also that we stick to the timetable, because negotiations have a way of just going on and on and on and on, and we have some famous negotiations in the UN that have gone on for decades. And I am of the view that we do not have time. When we look at the plastic soup in the oceans, in our rivers, when we understand what's in our soils and in our water, and indeed even in our bodies, I think that we all understand how critical this is. So the timetable is one that I do believe we need to be mindful of and stick with, not at the price of quality of a text, but with the focus and the decision and the desire to actually meet that. And I hope very much, as you may have heard me say in the opening, that I hope very much that this session, which has had, I mean, it's brilliant how it has gone so far. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that it will continue down this path, but the organizational issues were dealt with in an expedited way on Monday, and member states and all delegations hopped immediately into the substance of the matter. And now we do have the contact groups, and they are engaging, and they have clear mandates that have been agreed. All of this is the Nairobi spirit that is here, and hopefully with your good presence and the leadership of the chair and the brilliant executive secretary, that will be that little fairy dust that we need to have to arrive in a good way forward. So my hope is very much that we would see that the chair of the INC is being asked to prepare a revised iteration for the next INC-4, so that will enable member states and all delegations to step into the fuller negotiation. This is how I think this is planned, and that's very much my hope. And of course, also to have clarity on what happens with respect to the intersessional. I think that we cannot underline enough the value, and I said that at my starting out, that observers play in this process. And for us at UNEP, we are 51 years old, and we know that environment is not something that belongs in a government office. It belongs to communities, it belongs to families, it belongs to villages, it belongs to indigenous people, it belongs to us all. And so having, and of course businesses and so on and so forth, and scientists, etc. So having those voices here matter, and matter greatly. And so the fact that you are all here pushing for solutions within the space that you work, with the context that you bring, adds a lot of value. The science, the waste pickers, indigenous people, youth, as well as industry, have huge roles to play, each in their way. And obviously, what we are urging industry to do is to innovate, to rethink, to spur solutions, because we know that we need to ship things around, and we know that we need to contain things, and so on and so forth. How do we do that in a manner that does not, where these containment packages, etc., do not end up in the environment? So the instrument really has to be informed by science. Some of you come from a scientific background. I thank you for being here and for lending your science to this process. We at UNEP know that everything we do is based on science. And so I do thank those of you, whether you are a concerned scientist or you are a scientist writ large, I very much thank you for being present. It matters, and matters a lot. And also what we place great value on as UNEP, maybe also even more so because of our legacy and our history, living here in our home in Nairobi, is the fact that we have a good diversity of voices across the full spectrum, from geographical location as well as genders, and that matters a lot. So I think from my side, finally, just please continue to bring that creativity, that can-do spirit, calling out when you must, because that's also your job, and pushing for things that you see are important. We will continue to work at UNEP and with the INC Secretariat, which we are proud of, to ensure that we can have the widest possible, the biggest possible participation. As I said, in Paris, rooms do have walls, and there's just a reality to that, but I think we've been able to find ways around this with the overflow room. But yes, every place we will have these INCs, there will be walls, and walls will mean that there will also be capacity limits. But that's the case in any COP that you would go to, and I think you're all aware that there are certain limitations. But I can assure you that to the extent that we can, there shall be no closed rooms where observers will not have access, because I think that that is very critical. So with that, let me hand it back over to you, if I may. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Anderson, for your brief remarks. I would like to give the floor now to Ambassador Mesa Cuadra.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Executive Director, Executive Secretary, dear friends. We are very honored and pleased to be with you. Since the beginning of this process, we have always stressed the importance of the role of the stakeholders, particularly civil society, scientific community, industry, and now also here international organizations. So we appreciate very much the role you are playing. It has been more than 1 year in this, and I think the role, the awareness raising, the scientific reports and contributions that are already happening in the industry that is now, as the Executive Director mentioned, changing in order to be more sustainable in their production, I think it's important. We have been already, with your help, doing a change that is important. But now we have the responsibility to move forward the process in this challenging stage. We're in the middle of the process. We don't have too much time to end with finalize the text. And we are, for the first time, starting our discussions based on the pseudo draft that we prepared after the mandate we received from the INC-2. So we knew that this is going to be challenging, but I think we started, as the Executive Director mentioned, with this Nairobi spirit here in Africa, in Kenya, in Nairobi, and I think we started in a positive mood, positive way, a constructive engagement from different delegations. We had a very positive preparatory meeting, and the 2 days we have been already here are also positive because we have started what we came here to do, discuss in a very focused way based on the zero draft that we prepared. So we are optimistic. We don't want to be overconfident. We need to be continuously supporting the co-facilitators, the delegations, and I think the role you play here is also very positive. So thank you for being with us. Thank you for your engagement and your contribution, and I'm sure we will find ways to end our task in the time we have been assigned. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And now I'd like to give the floor to our Executive Secretary, Ms. Jyoti Martur-Philippe.
Thank you, Juan. So the problem, as always, coming last is that they have said everything. So all I will say is thank you so much for being here, and thank you for engaging with us. At the Secretariat, we have tried to endeavor to get you to engage as much as possible. We have had submissions from you, lots of submissions before INC-2 and now before INC-3. They're all on our website. The chair hosted 2 webinars, each ahead of INC-2 and INC-3, just for observers to give us your viewpoints. He has also instructed the co-facilitators to make time for observers to speak in contact groups. We are trying to take as many observers as possible to speak during the plenary sessions, so we are trying as much as possible to get you to be here, to be engaged in the process and to hear your voices. I also know that in Paris and in Uruguay, we had really difficult time on a queuing system for observers. So our very innovative observer liaison has put in place a QR code system, which we tried out yesterday and today. I hope it has worked well for you, and we would love to hear any feedback from you on this. Other than that, I'm just going to hand it back to Juan and welcome, and we really look forward to hearing what you have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much to our Executive Secretary. So it's time to get your comments, your questions. Just a reminder for those who just came into the room, there is a QR code in the microphones where you can scan and be on the queue. So I'm just going to take some of the questions and comments from those on the list. I will start with Juliana Cortez from the Latin American Alliance of Food and Beverage Industry Association. Over to you, Juliana.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I'm Juliana Cortez, speaking on behalf of the Latin American Alliance of Food and Beverage Associations. As an industry with an intrinsic relation with our environment, we support the development of an ambitious and effective international legally binding instrument to end the plastic pollution. We are a sector focused on improvement the living conditions of our communities. As such, we applaud the inclusion of decisive measures like those aimed at increasing recovery and recycling rates. The Latin American food and beverage industry has a robust experience working through every different approach for plastic waste, but always with tangible results. We are filled with emotion by seeing this extremely symbolic place full of delegates and observers exchanging ideas, since only with collaboration, trust, and determination we will meet the mandate dictated in this world. The world is watching, and our industry has listened. Thank you for your efforts and your attentions.
Thank you very much, Juliana. I will go back to the podium if anyone would like to respond on anything. Let me take another question or comment from Suhair Ahmed from the Global Youth Coalition on Plastic Pollution. Suhair, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Executive Director, Honorable Chair, and our beloved Executive Secretary for organizing this second meeting after INC-2 with observers. And it's a good practice, and I really appreciate your effort to build on that. First of all, I want to remind, in a report, Madam Executive Director, you mentioned in the lead up to the UNEP 6, the report that you published, that young people doesn't have the necessary decision-making authority that they deserve. And we obviously agree on that, and we want to remind that, it needs a lot of work to put young people in the decision-making positions, but we also currently maybe we need to work on making sure to protect the right to observe, substantially this kind of important policy process. This reminds us that young people, we have limited resources. Sometimes we have limited decision-making capacities, which kind of limit our capacity to be in this kind of negotiation room, fight with other observers to have a seat, and sometimes maybe, to bring our voice in form of formal interventions. So, I appreciate the Executive Secretary's efforts to give us a designated seat at INC-2, and where we actually performed I would say that we performed a lot good. We provided input substantially to the process. We expected the same for this very INC-3, because I know that it's a home to UNEP, and I think we can resolve this issue. Young people, they comprise more than 60% of the global population, and this treaty is going to impact their life in future. We are not just the current generation, we're the future custodians. So our voice has to be here. Our right to observe this process has to be protected. And in this process, we have maybe 60 seats for the civil society observers. We just want one seat, one youth flag. This is not just our pride. This is actually giving the member states, reminding them that the current generation and the future custodians are in the room. They're observing, they're listening to you, and they are expecting something better for you, because this is affecting our life on ground. Regarding the intersectional work, it's very important to make sure the civil society stakeholders are engaging. I understand that some of the regional meetings were close to the observers. I want to request Honorable Chair, Executive Director, and Executive Secretary to request to the member states to keep it open, if possible, at least for some sections, so that we can get the opportunity to give our regional perspective, provide the regional perspective inside the consultations or the meetings. Okay, I'll just stop there because I want to give time to other observers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Suhair. I would give the floor now to Ana Rocha from the Global Alliance of Incinerator Alternatives. Over to you, Ana.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity. I would like to ask about the fact, or raise the issue of conflict of interest, and the fact that under the category of observers, we end up having in the room both the NGOs and civil society, the major groups and stakeholders, despite not being recognized that way. But we also have representatives of the plastic industry that have different interests in the treaty. And I think it would be beneficial to split those categories so that we basically have a better sense of who is in the room, what are the numbers, and better representation as well. So that's the one from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ana. I will give the floor now to the International Science Council, Adetone Mustafa. Over to you.
Thank you. We really want to thank the Executive Director of UNEP, the Chair of INC, and the Executive Secretary of INC for recognizing the role of science. And you adequately mentioned that. Thank you very much. One of the challenges we currently think we are having now is, even though there is acknowledgement of the need for science and for the negotiation to be based on rigorous scientific evidence, there is currently no formal role for scientists in the negotiation space. We believe that having a science, policy, and society interface, a mechanism, will really help in having all regions access to the same information and common language. Currently, the evidence for impact of plastic pollution and the suggested solutions and their analysis of the appropriateness in different geographies is not available to all regions of the world. We believe that having a mechanism, a platform, where this scientific evidence will be available to everyone will benefit the negotiation and will benefit people all over to access this information. Therefore, we are proposing that we have this mechanism created, science, policy, society interface, and the International Science Council, with our experience, being a body of science academies from 245 countries, we are available to work with the Secretariat to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your intervention. I think it would be perhaps time to go back to the podium and hear any reactions. So if anyone would like to start.
Now they want me to speak first. Okay, so Zuhair, I believe that you have brought your own plates, and it's okay, it's fine. And the rest of your points are duly noted. On conflict of interest, as you all know, we use the ECOSOC accredited entities, the entities that are accredited with the UN Environment Assembly, and all the multilateral environment agreements that are hosted by UNEP. We allow 5 people per NGO to register, and it is up to each NGO to decide who to bring. It is not up to the Secretariat to tell anyone who comes. So we also believe that everybody should be here and represented, as our executive director said. We also believe that there is a very strong role for science in the negotiation. It is being discussed by and negotiated through the treaty and in the contact groups right now, and will be decided by member states. But we also, at the same time as we had this resolution 514, we also had a resolution on science policy panel, which is ongoing, and I'm sure that there will be some interlinkages between our two processes.
Maybe just to add, because on the some of the organizational, I simply don't know, because it's really handled by the Secretariat. But just to say that, starting at the top to Juliana Cortez, thank you. We really hope that other similar organizations will lean in proactively with solutions for an industry that obviously has a footprint. And so we really hope that there will be proactive solutions beyond the recycling dimension, as I have also mentioned in my opening speech yesterday. And to Zuhair, it's very important that we have young peoples and young voices. And so I thank you for your persistence. I'm glad, I think I heard from Jyoti that it is sort of resolved, but the right to speak is one that nobody can take away from you. And so finding ways in which this can happen under the structures and the modalities which we are forced to operate with, I think I would very, very much encourage. And of course, it is important that we consider how will observers, including youth and children, engage in the intercessional work, as you rightly commented. And to Anna, I think, from the Global Alliance for Incinerator Alternatives, I think, I'm just looking, where was she now? There, yeah, thank you. Just to say, I think Jyoti has responded. We operate under certain rules, and those rules are what they are, and these accredited entities under ECOSOC and UNEA rules is how it works, and we have a ceiling on individual participation. You will all be able to read who was here. It's completely public. Nobody's participating under false pretenses, and so the alliance and association that individual delegates have is clear. And to my science colleagues, thank you. You raised some absolutely critical points, and a science platform at some point will be required to inform this. Now here, the member states are negotiating the big, broad outlines, and it's really helpful that you are in the room. But no, you don't have a negotiating seat per se or a platform per se. But I know that the member states are very keen to hear your voice, so please do engage with member states. And as the draft text will begin to take shape, there will clearly be a need to hear the voice of science. Many will not understand the chemical compounds. Many will have complex, I mean, these are very heavy articles in the literature that negotiators may not necessarily be able to decipher. We do, and we are engaged in the science policy panel negotiations. I hope that in the wisdom that remains with member states, that there will be bridges built between this and that, between the INC and this SPP negotiation. That would be a fairly self-evident thing to me, since this, a little bit like how we see IPCC is providing part of the science, but not all the science, but a good chunk of the science to the UNFCCC process. A little bit like we see how IPBES is providing science, not all the science, but important science, to the biodiversity convention. So that would be critical, but it is in the hands of member states to take that negotiation. But thank you for the point. Thank you very much.
Very briefly, only to support what the Executive Director mentioned regarding youth, we always stated and recognized the importance of the role of the youth in general environmental issues, because it's an intergenerational problem, and they are always a factor of change. So we support very much, and while we have been in the presidency, we try to give them a voice and interventions and participating with them in gatherings and the meetings we have had, informal meetings and others. So we will continue doing that. And also regarding science, we always stress that this process should be a science-based process, and it's logically when we enter these more focused discussions on the issues that are going to be considered for the text, we will need, particularly for the international work, the importance contribution of the science community. So I think those are key aspects of the process, and we support them very much.
Thank you very much for your reactions on the podium. I would like to give now the floor to Samir Joshi from ECOFAN.
Namaskar, and I bring greetings from the ecosystem of the young innovators, the startup ecosystem. These innovators are bringing in a lot of innovations into the global plastic action plans, leveraging the wealth of real world, the data and the connections to guide the policy, create action plans, and monitor the compliance. Prioritizing solutions that are environment efficient, inclusive, and scalable, finding solution to plastic pollutions. Just like how the scientists have been here. I'm not asking for a seat. I'm just asking them to be integrated in the system. They're young and they have a dream. To dream for a better world, for we are just trustees on this planet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will give the floor now to Gonzalo Munoz.
Thank you so much, Executive Director of UNEP, Chair of INC, and Executive Secretary of INC. Thanks so much for the opportunity to address and share with this group an initiative that is taking place during the INC process. As we all know, when it comes to the treaty, it will come a moment when there will be a need of implementing the treaty, and that role comes to the responsibility of the action agenda. And we all know that that implementation body, of course, cannot exist until the treaty is agreed. In the meantime, there are certain roles that the stakeholders can play, mostly while they can provide the right type of information properly and valid, informally and in a formal way to the negotiators. I am mostly referring to processes like that already exist, like what we had in the climate agenda under the UNFCCC. The action agenda was part of the Paris Agreement, and that was developed later on under the Marrakesh Partnership as a mechanism that is putting together all non-state actors. In this moment, what we have is the capacity of learning from the climate experience, and now we have the possibility of doing so with the opportunity that a group of countries called the Friends of the Action Agenda are providing. This group of countries are now offering the possibility for the stakeholders to provide concrete information and get structured in a way that later on can be potentially perceived as a good way to coordinate a future action agenda. The Friends of the Action Agenda are some countries that now called and sent a call to action today for stakeholders to develop formally some information through a document that will be prepared towards INC-4 as a stakeholders action report, and later on this group of stakeholders will provide the Friends of the Action Agenda with sectorial pathways towards a high possible ambition. I'm saying this as something that is extremely valuable, hopefully for the whole process, but also for a group of observers that I hope that will be excited on the opportunity of contributing with this group, with the information that will be validated and then contributing to the negotiators. Tomorrow, there will be a meeting of the Friends of the Action Agenda at 1:15, so of course are all invited to learn about the process, to learn about the details of the work ahead, and hopefully we can organize all the information that the Friends of the Action Agenda are requesting in a way that will contribute to a very strong, meaningful treaty that then later on can be implemented in the most meaningful and high ambitious way. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Gonzalo. I'll give the floor now to James Bariugava from Youth Alive Uganda.
Thank you so much. I thank you, Mr. Chair, and the UNEP ED and the entire Secretariat for the work well done, and for creating this wonderful moment to engage with the observers. My name is James Bariugava from Youth Alive Uganda, and representing similar youth organizations in Uganda. I have no doubt that this is going to be a wonderful instrument in addressing plastic pollution, including in the marine environment. I strongly believe that the implementation of this instrument is going to depend entirely on how UN member states domesticate this instrument, and indeed the Zero Draft talks about member states developing national plans. Now, part 4 of the Zero Draft talks about the implementation and compliance, especially establishing the governing body. My question is, what kind of powers shall this governing body have over member states, especially who fail to comply with the provisions of this instrument. I thank you.
Thank you very much, James. And now over to Jim Phuket from Basel Action Network.
Thank you very much. Yes, this forum is an excellent opportunity, so keep these going. I think the zero draft was very clearly reflective of a lot of observer comments, and it was really quite a miracle how well that was put together, so big kudos on the zero draft. The QR queuing system, I think we can get used to it. It certainly has some advantages. The one thing I would want to question about it, though, is it's a bit opaque about who gets chosen for speaking. Today there was a queue for the plenary speeches, and it was cut off without explanation of how many people still wanted to speak, who they were, and whether there was any opportunity to provide written interventions. So it was a bit abrupt and rude, I think, that suddenly it was halted and people around me were prepared to speak, and I think there could be a better way forward. Of course, not everyone is going to be able to speak, but there should be some transparency about how the decisions are made, who gets put in the queue. Is it first come, first serve? Is it who represents who? And so I would hope you would take that into consideration. The only other thing I would mention is I find a bit odd is that the list of participants doesn't have any addresses or emails, and in other conventions, the BRS, et cetera, those are all provided, very important for networking and contacting delegates in a forum where that's rather difficult otherwise. So I hope you can comment on those things. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jim. Over to Samuel Tetsopang from Association Institute of Total Environment.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Inge, the Executive Director of UNEP. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and also thank you to the Ambassador, the Chair of this conference, and also the Secretary of INC. My association is made up of a group of scientists, young scientists, engineers, based mostly in Cameroon, where we try to see what is happening in environment and give opportunity to people to adapt. Then, regarding the zero draft, which is very important to understand exactly what is going to be the future of international banding instrument on plastics and the environment, we found that there's little mention on the informal sectors. Of course, people are thinking about informal sectors as those who are picking waste. But if you go to many countries in developing countries in Africa, you find that the informal sectors is almost like the huge young people, mothers, fathers, who are trying every day to fight to have an income for them. For example, I quote a data for UNDP after the COVID-19. Nearly 83% of employment in Africa and 85% in sub-Saharan African is informal, absorbing many of the continent's young employment seekers. So it's very interesting to understand that for us, and then for many young people in Africa, the best way to find job is in the informal sectors. But the way that I see the convention, at the end, we are going to see a total banning of the use of plastics, especially single-use plastics. And then they are going to lose their job directly. Then I call upon to all the executive members of UNEP and INC, please to always look and see if the delegates, all the members, especially those who are developing countries are taking care of what are going to do those who are involved in the informal sectors, and then those who are using single plastic everywhere. Because using hammers on their head to ask them to ban directly the use of single plastic is just to ask them to go and sit at home, die of hunger, not sending their children in school. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Samuel. And now over to Ayman from Mohammed V Foundation for Environmental Protection.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Executive Director, Chair, and Executive Secretary for valuing the importance of meaningful engagement of observers in this process, including by steering away from closed-doors meetings. I connected earlier with the passionate intervention from my brother Zuhair when it comes to the importance of children and youth in these processes. I was also happy to listen to my good friend Gonzalo moments ago, and the initiative he referred to seems very important indeed. He certainly has the expertise, energy, and spirit of inclusion to bring this forward. I wanted to highlight that environmental education and capacity building would benefit from additional focus in this space. I also wanted to highlight the importance of strengthening the participation of observers from Africa and the Global South, and acknowledge the important efforts of the INC Secretariat to that effect. Finally, many African stakeholders consistently and strongly commend the leadership of UNEP, and rightfully so, and we are one of those. In the words of His Excellency President yesterday, the wisdom of making sure that the grandchildren of this process stay close to their grandparents matters. As the famous African proverb goes, it takes a village to raise a child, and UNEP is both a beautiful village and family. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ayman. And now I'll give the floor to Jair Urriola Quiroz from the Comisión Centroamericana de Ambiente y Desarrollo.
Thank you, Madam Anderson, Madam Executive Secretary, Mr. Ambassador. My name is Jair Urriola. I'm the Executive Secretary of the Central American Commission of Environment and Development that brought together the countries of Central America and Dominican Republic. We forward some guidelines on which our country have technical agreed, but I want to refer to other topics not mentioned in the zero draft, but important for our region. In particular, the standardization of criteria, terms, and/or vocabulary for the region, which will provide a basis to be able to apply according to the reality of our countries in the corresponding cases. It's important to incorporate the promotion of recycling and its change with the relevant private sectors in the region, and the joint work with the recovery sector. It's important for us as country promote the communication of consumer information rights and duties. And finally, it is important that this treaty includes a focus on human rights and in all dimensions, and what this implies from a focus on the environmental, health, and gender, to name a few. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jair. I would head back to the podium for reactions on the interventions. Over to you.
Thank you very much for all the interventions. Very important points have been raised. There were references particularly to the zero draft we were mandated to prepare. We are pleased that the zero draft has been well received by the civil society and several member states. And what we have done with the zero draft was basically reflect the different positions, including the ambitious ones. And I think this is something that we were mandated for. We try to reflect all the positions, and in some cases, as I also mentioned yesterday, we can improve the document because we probably receive in some areas more information than others. So we wanted to be fair to all the contributions we receive. So, and we appreciate very much the role of the civil society, because we had several webinars, informal meetings that also give us information that was very useful for the preparation of this zero draft. There was also a mention to the observers and the participation. We will try to accommodate more observers in the, we have a plenary session on Thursday, so we will try to have more of observers intervening in that occasion. Always time is our challenge, but we will try to do our best. Regarding the informal sector, I fully agree that this is a very important point. A lot of the developing economies have large informal sectors, including mine, so we know very well how important it is to consider this element in our text. As you can see in parts of the zero draft, there are specific mentions to the informal sector in the waste pickers and waste industry, and also there is a chapter on the just transition, which is extremely important also because of the role this sector that works mostly in an informal way, and the large and important contribution they have been doing for decades, to our environment through the role of the waste picker. So I think it's very important to focus on that, and we will try to push in that direction. So basically, I would like to now thank you.
Maybe if I take it from there, and really good comments to Mr. Samir Joshi from the Eco Fund, and thank you for making the point around young entrepreneurs. You know, it very much creates a bridge to what we heard previously from Suhair Ahmed. You know, youth are carrying a burden, but they're also carrying a sack of solutions. And so making sure that the burden they carry is the one upon which we leave to their shoulder, but the sack of solutions need to be heard, need to be in the room, which is why I think it's very important that that finds voice. And to Gonzalo Munoz, thank you. I think the lessons that we've learned from the Marrakesh Partnership, the Lima to Paris Action Plan, how voices can come together around and sectoral solutions can come together around a shared problem is really wonderful. And I'm delighted that member states have decided to form this Friends of the Action Agenda. And we from UNEP are watching eagerly to see how this will evolve and what kind of support may or may not be needed, but certainly should it be needed, we would be ready, but we also think that there may also be a lot of good self-organization. So we stand by and will be ready should that be required. And to Mr. James, I missed your surname, from the Youth Alliance from Uganda, just to say that the question you ask is how will UN member states make this instrument come alive at home? What kind of power shall the governing body have? This is in the hands of the negotiators right now. And that is where the issue of quote-unquote legally binding comes in. Today, UNEP is a proud host of a number of treaties that does have legally binding elements. Now, we are not the police force that goes and whacks national authorities over the head, but if you think of CITES, the convention that deals with legal and illegal trade of wildlife and live or animal parts or plants, you can't trade them. And if they are listed, it's illegal, and you can end up in court if that so is done. Similarly, banned substances under the Montreal Protocol that have been agreed to be exited cannot be produced. And if they are produced, the whole world will cry foul. And because one can detect by measurements. So I think it's in the hands of member states what kind of elements will be negotiated and what kind of bits will be legally binding, because not everything will be technical assistance, training, you know, there will be things that probably member states say, no, this is just what we do, for what other pieces might be very much on the legally binding side. QR code, I know nothing of it. Others will be more knowledgeable. Mr. Samuel from the Institute of Environment, I think you've already answered fully on the SME side and so on. I think we completely agree. And to my dear friend Ayman from Mohammed Sank, thank you for this generous and kind comment. But also thank you for stressing the importance of the diversity in observers. I think we are acutely aware of that, which is why we celebrate that we do have a good diversity. It's obviously, we saw when we were in Punta del Este, we had many people from Latin America. We saw when we were in Paris, we had many people from Europe. We're seeing that when we are here, we have a good number from Africa. And so next time when we go to Canada, we'll see what we get from North America and of course from Asia. But for me, this is absolutely critical. The validity of what is being negotiated is large part dependent on the breadth of participation. And finally, to Mr. Viola, thank you for your kind comments. I think you're absolutely right. Again, it is in the hands of negotiators, but standardization and ensuring that there is a promotion around consumer rights and around an understanding, and ensuring that everything is with a human rights focus in its broadest interpretation. I think this is a way the UN likes to work. The other treaties that we have under our belt encompass that, and we will count on member states and observers to ensure that this is also where this lands. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I think everything has been addressed except the QR code and the participants list. So let me start with the participants list. We have been advised by our lawyers to keep the safety and security of our participants in mind, and have been requested not to put in contacts in the list. So we don't do that. We also, and thank you for your comments on the QR code system. We will take we'll take them into account as we continue to improve. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your interventions. There is still a list of about 7 who would like to speak, so we are going a little bit over time. So just for the sake of time, if you could keep your interventions short, please. I would give the floor now to David Munene from Catholic Youth Network for Environmental Sustainability in Africa.
Honorable Executive Director of the UNEP in Anderson, thank you very much for being a keeper of promises and a thrasher of rhetoric. It was in the green room last year during UNEP 5 that you promised that the plastics resolution was going to go through, and we are very grateful that that promise has come to fruition. Your Excellency, Ambassador Meza, I cannot thank you enough for keeping your cool despite all the dissenting opinions, and your Honorable Executive Secretary Jyoti, your smile is just intoxicating, and we need that to deliver this treaty. I will be very specific to the African region because I happen with my very good brother here, Ayman, to facilitate the engagement of the UNEP major groups and stakeholders in Africa, to kindly look forward to the INC-4 because our colleagues in the observer room right now have ably been able to address most of the substantive issues. Increasingly, in our region, whenever we hear that an important session such as this has been moved, for example, to the North America, we get a bit jittery. And we are now reaching out to you directly to kindly request that you midwife a process through which you can engage with the government of Canada to make it easy for the visa application processes for our colleagues, especially from the region of Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Over now to Pren Saintahru from Asia Indigenous Peoples Pact.
Thank you very much, Madam Executive Director and the Executive Secretary of UNEP. And we are very thankful for UNEP's this very important role of leading the development of this international legally binding treaty on plastic pollution, including marine environment. Yeah, and we UNESPO are very thankful to hear indigenous knowledge technologies, innovations, and practices. But it's very important to also, means have been provision in the treaty that free prior informed consent as the mandatory provision, because indigenous knowledge systems are the intellectual property of indigenous people, and that is the also right to self-determination of the indigenous people. So those knowledge systems, whatever indigenous people they practice, are the key drivers of the nature-based solutions. So this pollution is not just one component. There are also climate change and then the biodiversity loss. So these three planetary crises which are happening, behind all those, combating solutions are with the indigenous knowledge systems. So it is very important to ensure the provision of mandatory free prior informed consent from the particular indigenous communities if their knowledge systems are being taken forwarded for the solution purpose. And another important thing is we indigenous peoples who are doing all these practices have our one indigenous land territories and resources, and in order to produce those plastic materials, the resources, it comes from the indigenous land and territories. So it is also very important to secure the right of land, territory, and resources, and also the right of the nature. So that's the request, and I hope our executive director is very very sensitive on the environmental human rights. So hope these provisions will be included in the ongoing treaty. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Prem. Over now to Benito Malwa from Friends World Committee for consultation.
Yeah, thank you. Like the other friends have been able to speak, we just want to appreciate the leadership of the INC and the executive director of UNEP for what we are able to put in place for us to be able to participate and also give our views. Coming from the faith-based organization, and I'm sure that the faith-based organization, they reach out to the mass when it comes to communication and implementation of such decisions made from such gatherings. And in this case, my request is that is there any way that we can be able to be separated from NGOs so that we are faith-based organizations, so that we are coming up with substance and what we are doing with our following, so that now when we live here, we know that, okay, we are accountable to our following. So that's one thing that I wanted to speak. Another one, I think many friends from Africa have been able to speak from the low-income countries about reaching out to this INC. Now we are going to have INC-4 in Canada for the purpose of continuity, for the purpose of continuing with what we are doing from INC to INC now 3. Now we are going to INC-4. There might be a discontinuity because after this, if we can't be able to make to Canada, then you may find that there will be now new, fresh, again, ideas coming for us to continue in INC-4. What are we going to do to be able to see that there's continuity? I'm happy that the list of participants have been rolled out, but how are we going to make sure that quite a good percentage from these observers are attending INC-4 for continuity purposes? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Benito. Now over to Maro Mika Maua from the Lutheran World Federation.
Thank you so much. Let me begin by honoring the presence of the Madam Executive Secretary and the Director and the Ambassador for being here this evening. Actually, this is the problem again of speaking most probably last, because mine has just been spoken by the just concluded speaker. But I want to speak to the modalities of the implementation of this instrument, that in as much as we're trying to explore the legally binding approaches, there's also the voluntary approaches that we would want to engage. Speaking to the words of my very own president, William Ruto, during his opening remarks, he said that humanity must change its course. the ways that speak to humanity basically revolve around the laws of the land, the moral obligation, and lastly, culture. If we are to effect this instrument at the implementation process, then I all want us to agree today that it has to be about the moral obligations which the voices of the faith-based organizations have to be amplified. Again, it is my simple appeal to you that you recognize the faith-based organization in a very separate and unique way in matters moving onwards. I'm not saying this because I want to marry a theologian, but because moral obligations have to be brought on board. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mauro. I would like to give the floor now to Selina Horak from the International Atomic Energy Agency.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here and to try to share some part of our global initiative that we are working with our member state. So it has been said already that there is a need for action in the implementation of the treaty, and science, technology, and innovation is key for this purpose. So that is why the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, and a specialized UN organization, has launched a global flagship initiative, New Tech Plastic Initiative, that is built on the IAEA effort to assist member states to deal with plastic pollution through a two-pronged approach. A downstream approach which aims to monitor and assess marine microplastic and understand their environment and economic impact using nuclear and nuclear-derived techniques. And two, an upstream approach targeting the mitigation of plastic waste volume via innovative upcycling, increasing repurpose of those hard-to-recycle plastic into valuable product, and developing bio-based plastic as sustainable alternative. Some examples of the application of this technology are radiation-assisted pyrolysis for production of fuel, oil, and additives, improving the process efficiency and reducing the temperature. Two, repurposing plastic waste into compatibilizer for constructing material made of wood and plastic composites. And three, strengthening the use of biomass for production of bio-based and biofuels. 30 countries are participating in this initiative, and 8 countries has decided to have pilot-scale plan using this technology. So IAEA is using all the mechanisms that has, as any other UN organization, to support the member state. And this initiative has raised the interest from many member states that has also provided some funds to conduct this initiative. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Selina. I have 2 other interventions from observers on the floor. We are actually running very late on time, so please keep as short as you can so we can close the conversation. Over to you, Oluwaseyi Moejo from Capital Planet Foundation.
Okay, good evening, honorable executives, and thank you for the opportunity. My name is Oluwaseyi Moejo, and I am an environmentalist from Nigeria, representing the Capital Planet Foundation. Over the past 32 years, our mission has been clear, empowering young people to become problem solvers for the planet. Today, I represent thousands of young people from more than 90 nations in our Planeteer Global Network who believe turning the tide on plastic is among the most important issues of our time. Many of us don't have a living memory of our communities and waterways not polluted with plastic. Today, we reiterate that this treaty presents an unparalleled global opportunity to turn the tide on this plastic crisis. We implore you to consider the youths who are inheriting a planet full of plastic and advance an inclusive policy approach, because young people are central to lasting and sustainable solutions. We present 3 questions for your responses. So the first question is, how can we ensure active youth roles and engagement throughout the treaty development and implementation processes? We recommend 2 methodologies. The first one is by lowering the age limit for entry into INC sessions to make this more accessible to younger generations. And 2, establishing a youth expert advisory council to guide the Honorable Chair throughout the INC process. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Oluwase. And over to Rebecca Helm from Ocean Care, from the last observer on the floor.
Thank you very much. Apologies for the strange lean. My microphone isn't working. Oh, okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, I'm actually here speaking on behalf of the Scientists Coalition for an Effective Plastics Treaty. I just want to share with everyone that there are over 30 scientists who are representing themselves in their own capacity as experts. We have global world experts in everything from polymers to different forms of repurposing to pollution. So please know that we're here. You can recognize us by this lanyard that we have, this blue and gold lanyard. And we are standing in collaboration with many other organizations, including Indigenous peoples and youth and women. But really, our fundamental goal is to help bring you the science that you need. So if you have any questions, be them scientific in nature, please come find one of us. We will help connect you to an expert who can translate the latest and best available science for your use. So thank you so much for having us here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Back to our people in podium, and if you could also combine your response with your final remarks, would be much appreciated. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Only to reiterate that this meeting has shown again how important it is to engage with all of you. I think we learned several things and also questions that make us reflect about how we can address better the process and in general this issue we are trying to tackle, plastic pollution. So what only I wanted to say and reiterate that we have been working with you and we will continue working with you. We appreciate your contribution and you can count on us up to the end of our task. Thank you.
For me, just many, many thanks, because you wanted also to wrap up. Thank you to you, Juan Pablo, and to everyone. Let me just very quickly run through the comments. Thank you to those from faith-based organization that spoke. I'll try to club it together as one, simply because time is short. But your presence really matters. We see how the faith-based organizations inside the Climate Convention, and they are registered as they are, as a non-governmental. That is a reality because the UN does stand in that manner, and so that's probably not a thing that we can change. But nevertheless, irrespective on the flag over which they fly within, say, for example, climate, the faith-based organizations are very, very helpful, also because they have a very large reach, irrespective of which faith, etc. It is very powerful, and it brings, as I think, was it Maru who said, it brings a moral obligation to the table, that it is, so it's not just the hard law, but it is also who do we want to be, and what does our faith or our spirit tells us to be. And so I think it's a very, very important point that you raised. To Prem, I'm sorry, I was trying to catch the name, but Prem Sayutaru, I think, who was from the Asia Regional Body, speaking to human rights and indigenous people, very important. Obviously, there can be no appropriations. And so I think in the UN we work very much with free, prior, and informed consent. That's a given principle and it's a non-negotiable. And I couldn't imagine that it would be anything else but that, because everything we do is based on that. Maybe finally, on the lowering of the age limit, at this point, the person has to be a recognized adult, because otherwise we have a legal responsibility for childcare and for a whole other set of things. So the age limit is in the UN processes, unless it is a school that comes in, and we have a whole different story with teachers and supervisors. but no, we cannot take responsibility for underage individuals. So that's just how it works in the United Nations. And I think any parent here will understand that, to be honest. But Jyoti, as I close out, just a huge thanks. And your engagement is absolutely critical, and we are all very, very keen to hear your voices. Thank you.
So I'll just say I'll just respond to the question of the government of Canada making it easy for observers. I think it came from several of our observers who spoke right now. The government of Canada has committed to try and make the visa application process simpler for you. I mean, the whole process, so that you can apply. There is a booth outside. By simpler, I don't mean that the form, but they've given a code and all of that. There is a booth outside which they have kindly put up. And so if you have any questions, please do go and ask them. We have also, INC has also sent out the invitations earlier, before INC-3, so that you can send in your registrations and you have a longer time to apply for a visa, recognizing we only have 4.5, 5 months between INC-3 and INC-4, and we have Christmas holidays in between. So I encourage you to send in your registrations as soon as possible, so that we can shortly after INC-4 approve you, and apply for the visas early on. And we will work with the government of Canada to ensure that the visa process is not so difficult. And in the end, I would just like to thank all of you, and thank Juan for moderating this, and thank you all of you for coming. It was a commitment that we made at INC2, and we will continue it to INC5, and we will see you then. Thank you.
Thank you very much to our Executive Director, our INC Chair, and our INC Executive Secretary. Just a kind reminder to everyone that in the Observers Room from 9:30 a.m. to 10 a.m., I will be there to answer any questions that you may have every day until Saturday, so from 9:30 to 10 a.m. And please feel free to stop me at any times you see me if you have any questions on observer participation in the INC process. And I hope you have a good rest of your evening. Take care, everyone.